I just put together this budget reanimator shell, and all that's missing are the creatures. The big scary things I actually want to reanimate. I have 20 slots left in the deck to fill with the nastiest creatures I can afford, but I like seeing how cheap I can push a budget deck, so I'm actually going to build 3 different versions of the deck at 3 different budgets. I'm going to build a $25 version, a $50 version, and a $100 version to find out how much you actually need to spend to make the deck work. I did the math and I spent almost exactly $20 on these 80 cards. So to hit the budget targets, I'm going to build a $5 creature package, a $30 creature package, and an $80 creature package. But to make it even more interesting, I'm about to go on a trip to Japan, and I'm going to build the rest of this deck by visiting Japanese card shops, checking out display cases, and digging through bulk bins to find the best creatures I can at each price point. There are some important creatures that I definitely want to include in the deck, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether or not I can find them cheap enough to fit in the budget. Now, before we go to Japan, I want to go over how the rest of the deck works so you can understand what I'll be looking for in the card shops. So here it is. Here are the main categories of the deck. I mean, obviously we're missing a big one, which is the creatures to reanimate, but for the most part, it is a really simple deck. We're going to start with the commander, which is Ultimate Green Goblin. Yes, I did decide to build a Spider-Man commander. This was the one that stood out to me as a good budget commander, and it's a really simple card. It costs 3 mana, it's a 5/4, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card, then create a treasure token. That's it. It has mayhem, but I mean, we're not discarding this because it's in the command zone. So all this is an enabler for reanimation. You get to discard a card every single turn, plus it gives you a little bit of ramp by making a treasure token. And the game plan is really simple. It is cast the Green Goblin on turn 3 and start reanimating big scary creatures on turn 4. So we'll move on to the next category, which is the reanimate spells. And honestly, what makes this a good budget commander is the fact that it lets us play not very good cards, but play them effectively. Because we're always going to get a treasure on turn 4, we're always going to be able to have 5 mana, and we can play all of these 4 and 5 mana reanimate spells that are really just not good enough to play most of the time. We're not playing anything like Reanimate, we're not playing Animate Dead, all the more efficient reanimate cards. Because we have this treasure token, we can play the crappy ones, and that keeps us under budget. So the reanimation spells package is simple. It is literally 20 reanimate spells that cost 4 or 5 mana, and have a little bit of upside. So Dread Return, we can flash it back if we need to. Bond of Revival gives the reanimated creature haste, which is huge when you're reanimating huge things. Liliana is a planeswalker with a -3 ability that reanimates, but if she sticks around, you can either use it again if you plus her up enough, or, use her other modes. Rakdos joins up, reanimates with counters, and whenever a legendary creature you control dies, Rakdos joins up, deals damage equal to that creature's power to target opponent. We're going to be looking for a lot of really big creatures, and if any of them are legendary, when they die, that's going to trigger. Coiling Rebirth, this one's going to be good, I know it. It's 5 mana reanimate, but you can gift a card, just let someone draw a card, and you can make a 1/1 token copy of the creature. So we're looking for creatures with big enters the battlefield effects or big repeated card draw effects. This will be a great card for copying those effects. And that's it. 20 4 or 5 mana reanimate spells with upside. So again, the way the game plan works is cast the commander on turn 3. On turn 4, use it to discard one of the big creatures to the graveyard, make a treasure token, and then cast one of these spells to reanimate the big creature you just discarded. And repeat over and over and over. Now that's your turn 3 and 4 play, but let's talk about potential turn 1 and 2 plays. We have more discard outlets. Faithless Looting, 1 mana, draw 2, discard 2. So you can start setting up your graveyard with big creatures even before you cast your commander. And then the same goes for the rest of these: Witch's Mark, Bitter Reunion, Highway Robbery, Kickoff Celebrations, Demand Answers, Thrill of Possibility, Grab the Prize. They are all 2 mana, discard a card, draw 2 cards, and then maybe a little extra effect. But the most important part is that turn 1 or 2, these will start letting us fill our graveyard with big creatures and draw more cards. Then we've got a couple extra discard outlets. We have Boundary Lands Ranger at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you can discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So if you have your commander out, that gives you 2 discards. It lets you draw a little bit extra. Even if your commander gets removed and you lose that as a discard outlet, if you have already reanimated something else big, you can still get this trigger. We have Zombie Infestation, pretty simple, discard 2 cards to make a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And then we have Chainer, Nightmare, Adept, discard a card. You may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn, activate only once each turn. So it's an extra discard outlet, and you know, if things are going poorly and your commander gets removed, you can at least still discard something and then hard cast it. If you've saved up treasures from the commander, or if the game goes late and you have the mana, you can just discard cards to cast the big creatures out of your graveyard. Next category is a little bit more card advantage. We have Altar of the Wretched. When it enters, you may sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, draw X cards, then mill X cards where X is that creature's power. You're going to have a lot of really big creatures in this deck, so this could get you a lot of cards, but my favorite way to use it is actually to just sacrifice the commander. So for 3 mana, you sacrifice your commander, you can draw 5 cards and then mill 5 cards. It's going to fill up your hand and it's going to fill up your graveyard with potential reanimation targets. Then you can either reanimate your commander or just let it go to the command zone and cast it again if you need it, but it has an extra ability here, Craft with 1 or more creatures. If you flip this over for 4 mana, its power and toughness are equal to the total power of the cards exiled when you crafted it. Plus, it has flying as long as you exiled a card with flying. Same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink. So if you have a bunch of creatures in your graveyard, which you will with this deck, you can just exile them to make a massive creature with a bunch of keywords, depending on what's in your graveyard. So it gets us a ton of card advantage, and it could potentially become a game-ending threat. Next up, we have Disciple of Bolas, which is similar, but not as good. When it enters, sacrifice another creature, gain X life, and draw X cards where X is that creature's power. Again, you can do it with your commander or any of the big creatures that you end up putting in the deck to just draw some extra cards and gain some life. Then we have my 3 favorite card advantage engines for this type of deck. We have a new one in Parker Luck. We'll get to that last. So starting with Keen Duelist, at the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library, and you each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player, and then put the revealed card in your hand. This card is going to be great in this deck because we're going to have a lot of expensive reanimate spells that cost 4 or 5 mana, plus we're going to have a ton of expensive creatures that cost 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. So you're almost always going to be dealing more damage to whoever you choose, plus you're getting cards in your hand. Twilight Prophet, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library, put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is that card's mana value. Again, a lot of expensive cards in this deck, 4 and 5 in the Reanimate pile, 6+ in the Reanimated Creatures pile. You're going to do a lot of damage with this Twilight Prophet. Parker Luck, same thing. At the beginning of your end step, 2 target players each reveal the top card of their library and each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player, and then put those cards into their hand. So those are just 3 cards that draw you an extra card each turn and have the potential to do a lot of damage in the process. All right, and the final category is, it's the leftovers. We have 2 small removal spells in Terminal Agony and Big Game Hunter. They both have Madness, meaning you can cast them for cheap when you discard them. Obviously, we have a lot of ways to discard them between a discard outlet in the command zone, a lot of faithless looting type effects. So you can just discard these for a little extra value. Discard them, but still cast them, use them as removal. And then of course we have Anger, which is just, it's great when you can discard this. As long as it's in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste, meaning whatever you reanimate can attack right away, and that is going to be very strong because these are going to be, hopefully, some very big, scary creatures. Last up is the lands, and it's a budget deck, so there's not much interesting here. It's a pretty cheap mana base, a lot of basics, a lot of swamps and mountains, and a little bit of utility, Bojuka Bog, Bonder's Enclave to just draw extra cards when you have the mana up. But for the most part, it just makes red and black mana, and they don't cost a lot of money. So you've seen the shell, and what we're looking for are the big creatures to reanimate. Obviously, it's a little light on removal right now, so it would be helpful to find creatures that can double as removal, either creatures that have enters the battlefield removal effects, or repeated removal effects. Anything that can just kill our opponent's creatures or permanents or whatever is going to be great on a big creature. Creatures that draw us a lot of cards are going to be important because we're discarding a card every turn, no matter what, when we have our commander in play. So any creatures that are going to help refill our hand, especially faster than we're discarding, is going to be super important. So the highest priority targets are big scary creatures that draw cards and big scary creatures that kill things. So without further ado, let's go to Japan and start looking for them. I'm starting my hunt at a Hareruya, and the way they organize their singles is going to make this really easy. In the display cases, they're sorted by color and mana cost, so I can jump straight to the high cost creatures. Eldrazi could be good for the $100 version of the deck, but these are all either too expensive or don't synergize well. Among the red creatures, I found Thembershode, but it's a bit expensive for what it does. Balefire Dragon could be a great, cheaper alternative if I can find one in English. I went to the PC to search for creatures that I definitely want in the deck. Phyllis, Broker of Blood, is a must for the $50 and $100 versions, but they only had it in Japanese. Rakdos, Patron of Chaos, is another great creature that'll draw a bunch of extra cards, but again, only Japanese printings were in stock. I moved on to the bulk bins, which are also sorted by color and mana cost, and that means I can just pull out the 6+ bins and look for big, scary creatures. The cheapest singles here are 30 yen, and $5 is about 750 yen, which means for the cheapest version of this deck, most of the creatures will have to be 30 yen or less, and only a few can cost any more than that. A lot of the cards in this bin are priced at 50 or 100 yen, so I'm gonna need a bit of luck to make the $5 creature package work. The deck will run best if I can find creatures that draw extra cards, so those are priority targets at every budget level, and Doomsday Excruciator is a big one at 50 yen. Now, I would spend hours here if I could, but I'm clearly starting to crash. It's only night 1, and at least I made it through the high mana cost bulk before heading back to the hotel. I found 3 must-have creatures in Doomsday Excruciator, Baleful Force, and Runescarred Demon, but at 200 yen total, they're already a quarter of the budget for the $5 package. Nagoya was the next city I visited, and Yellow Submarine was the first shop I checked. They had Arden the Usurper, Valgavoth Terror Eater, Villis, and Archon of Cruelty, which would all be great in the deck, but they were all in Japanese, and I'm only buying English cards for this challenge. Hareruya here was huge for the deck. I found Sheoldred Whispering One for 1600 yen, or about $10.50. This is an insanely powerful card for the deck since it's an entire removal and reanimation engine on its own. I checked the PC for Ancient Brass Dragon, another top-end reanimation engine, but they were out of stock. Summon Bahamut is another super strong card I'd like to include in the $100 deck, but at 3,000 yen, it eats up 20% of my budget, so I held out to try to find a cheaper one. Rakdos, Patron of Chaos, was 600 yen in English, which is actually more expensive than it would cost back in the US, so I skipped that one too. Cityscape Leveler for just $8 is a great deal though, so I had to order it. The next shop was Amenity Dream. They had both Arden and Primal Odin, but only in Japanese. They had a bit of bulk here too, and I ended up finding a couple good cards in it. Nagoya actually has 2 Hareruyas, and the second one was just as good as the first. Right up front, I found It That Betrays for under $7, and this is another powerful card that's going to synergize really well with Sheoldred in the $100 deck. I checked the 6+ bulk bins and pulled a few more cheap creatures for the $25 and $50 decks too. My final creature haul for Nagoya was Cityscape Leveler, Sheoldred, Artisan of Kozilek, Blast Furnace Hellkite, Combustible Gearhulk, and a cheaper Runescarred Demon that'll help free up more budget for the cheap deck. And then of course, It That Betrays for 1,000 yen, and at 30 yen each, Demon Lord Belzenlock, Ulamog's Crusher, Magmatic Force, and Infernal Sovereign. Next, I'm in Hiroshima, and again, I'm starting with Yellow Submarine. They had Grizzlebrand for 1,000 yen, and Archfiend of Despair at 1,400. There was so much bulk that by the time I finished digging through it, I completely forgot to go back for the Archfiend, so I had to hope that I'd find another one later on. Hareruya was next on the list, and they had Grizzlebrand for 400 yen cheaper than Yellow Submarine, and I still hadn't realized it was banned in Commander at this point. I checked the PC, but everything I looked up was sold out in English, so it was on to the bulk. I spent 2 hours going bin by bin just to keep myself from falling asleep too early. On my second night in Hiroshima, I took the bus out to a shop called Bulk Up that had amazing deals in their bulk bins. I stayed here for over an hour and ended up with a huge stack of cards, though not all of it was for this deck. I stopped by one last shop called Johnny's and dug through their bulk for another 45 minutes. Just like bulk up, I found a ton of great deals here, but again, not all for Green Goblin. The Hiroshima lineup starts with Grizzlebrand, which, again, I didn't realize it was banned when I bought it. Then we have Demon of Death's Gate at 100 yen, and Nullspine Dragon, Abhorrent Overlord, and Bogarden Hellkite at 30 yen each. Phyrexian Triniform for 100 yen, Orca Siege Demon and Archfiend of Sorrows for 30 yen each, plus another handful of big baddies for 100 to 200 yen each. Next up, Hareruya in Utsunomiya. I got there about 30 minutes before closing, so I had to speed through the bulk. They had the most English Final Fantasy I'd seen so far, and I ended up finding Summon Kuchata, Primal Odin, Anima, Umaro, and Arden, among others. From there, it's on to another Hareruya in Sendai, where I found Valgavoth in English for a little over $10. He's an absolute house for the $100 deck at 9/9 with flying and lifelink that also lets me steal creatures from my opponents. Of course, I'm not visiting Hareruya without checking the bulk, but the only thing I found here was a cheaper Scion of Darkness. After that Hareruya, it was a string of misses for the Goblin. At the next 4 or 5 shops across 3 different cities, I didn't find a single card for the deck, and I was running out of time. The second to last stop of my trip was Niigata, and I started off with a shop called Cards of Paradise. The inventory was organized by binders, so I took my time looking up each creature that I knew I wanted to find for the deck. Archfiend of Despair wasn't available in English, nor was Villis, Archon of Cruelty, or Ancient Brass Dragon, but I did find important creatures in Kothafed Soul Hoarder for 50 yen, Harvester of Souls for 100 yen, Rakdos for 100 yen, and Olivia Crimson Bride for 500 yen. After that, it was on to Hareruya. I went through all the high-cost bulk and found a handful of playables. Sometimes the same cards can be priced differently, so it really pays to dig deep in the bulk. If I hadn't found this cheaper Bloodgift Demon, I wouldn't have been able to fit it in the $5 creature package. I accidentally bought the wrong version of Kalitas, and at this point, I started forgetting what I'd already found, so I ended up with a few doubles, including some that were more expensive than the first time I found them. Finally, it was back to Tokyo for the last day of the trip, and I have an entire video dedicated to Tokyo's card shops that you can check out if you're interested. But for this challenge specifically, Hareruya Tournament Center was an absolute goldmine. It's the biggest Hareruya in Japan, and they had 3 times as much bulk as any other Hareruya that I've been to. I spent hours in here going through all the bins to fill any last gaps and make sure I had lots of options for each of my 3 budget levels. And since this was my last chance, I hit the PC to grab a few must-haves that I was still missing. Villis was 1,500 yen, which is unfortunately more expensive than it costs back home. Summon Bahamut was 3,500 yen here, a couple dollars more expensive than I'd found it earlier in the trip, but at this point I had no choice. If I wanted to play either of them, that's what they would cost, so I added them both to my order and left the math to figure out later. I ended up with a ton of singles from the bulk, some of which were repeats, but since I'm overpaying for some of the bigger cards, saving even 20 yen on some of the cheaper creatures could make or break the budget. So after 2 weeks of exploring card shops all over Japan, I ended up finding 81 different creatures for the deck, and obviously I'm not going to play all of them, but it never hurts to have options. So I think I'm actually going to start with the $100 version of the deck and then work our way down to the $25, the cheapest version, and I'll show you which creatures made the cut for each budget level. So for the most expensive version of the deck, I actually spent $79.05 on the creature package, bringing the grand total to $99.05, just under the $100 target. So the biggest and baddest creature, the most expensive creature in the deck, Summon Bahamut, does everything that we want from a creature. It's targeted removal on Chapter 1 and 2, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Chapter 3, it's going to draw us 2 cards, and Chapter 4, if it lives that long, this creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. If it makes it to Chapter 4, you're probably winning the game off of that because, everything else in here costs a lot of mana. So you're going to have a lot of mana on board. And then, of course, on top of that, it's just a 9/9 with flying. Next up, we have Sheoldred Whispering One. This will shut down the game. It's a 7 mana 6/6 with Swamp Walk. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, so it's going to reanimate something for free every turn, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. This can just lock down players if they don't have a big board. Very powerful, very mean. Speaking of powerful and mean, Valgavoth, Terror Eater, a 9/9 with flying and lifelink, ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, And if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth, and if you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So whatever creatures you're killing with Sheoldred or Summon Bahamut, you can cast those using your life total. And since it has lifelink, it's a 9/9, it's going to gain you 9 life probably every turn that it attacks. So really just another absolute monster. It that betrays. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. It's a 12 mana 11/11 with Annihilator 2. It's going to make your opponent sacrifice 2 permanents every time it attacks, and then you get those. Alright, next up we have Olivia Crimson Bride, another reanimate engine. Whenever it attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. So she's a little small on her own, 3/4, but she has flying and haste. When she attacks, she reanimates something immediately attacking, whether that's Bahamut or Valgavoth or Sheoldred. She's just going to reanimate an extra creature every turn, in addition to whatever you're doing with your reanimate spells. So very, very powerful in the deck. All right, next up, Villis, one of the most important creatures I wanted for the deck because it's going to help you draw a ton of cards. And like I said, we really want creatures that draw us cards. It's an 8/8 with flying. You can pay a black and 2 life to give target creature -1/-1 until end of turn, and whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. So basically, pay 1 black and 2 life, draw 2 cards. Plus, if you're getting attacked, if someone's pinging you for damage, you're drawing cards off of all of that. Villis is one of the best card draw engines in the deck. Next up, we have Rottenmouth Viper, another removal engine. It's going to help with the sacrifice synergies with It That Betrays or Valgavoth. Whenever it enters or attacks, put a blight counter on it, then for each blight counter on it, each opponent loses 4 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. So if you can give this haste, it enters and attacks, that's 2 counters, so each opponent is either going to lose 4 life, sacrifice a non-land permanent, or discard a card twice, just on this coming in and attacking. And of course, the more turns that goes on, next turn it's 3 permanents, next turn it's 4 permanents, 12 life, whatever. It adds up really quickly if it doesn't get answered. Burning Rune Demon. It's a 6/6 with flying, and when it enters, you tutor for 2 different cards, and an opponent chooses 1 to go to your graveyard and 1 to your hand. And the funny thing is, it doesn't matter what they choose because whatever goes to your hand, you can discard. Whatever goes to your graveyard, you wanted it there anyway because you're just going to reanimate it. So this is a great card because it perfectly sets up your next turn for reanimating something. Then we've got another card draw engine, Rakdos, Patron of Chaos. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent may sacrifice 2 non-land, non-token permanents. If they don't, you draw 2 cards. And most of the time, they are going to let you draw the cards because they don't want to sacrifice 2 things, especially if you have some way to steal those things. Shard of the Void Dragon. Whenever it attacks, each opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent. And then as a bonus, whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard or exile, it grows. Big creature, flying, 7/7, causes your opponents to sacrifice stuff over and over. Arden the Usurper is another reanimate engine. Demons you control have menace, lifelink, and haste, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, make a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 5/5 black demon. So it kind of reanimates, it exiles and makes a token copy of something, gives it haste, gives it lifelink, gives it menace. So this will just reanimate an extra card basically every turn as well, plus the upside of the keywords. All right, now we're into some of the cheaper creatures. Overseer of the Damned, it's a 5/5 with flying, and when it enters, you can destroy target creature, and it's going to make you zombie tokens as your opponent's creatures keep dying. So again, synergizing with all the other removal or sacrifice creatures that we have. And then here, you're going to see stuff that's going to appear in most of the versions of the deck. These are just good card draw creatures. Harvester of Souls, 6 mana, 5/5. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. If your opponents are sacrificing stuff, you're drawing a lot of cards. Runescarred Demon, 7 mana, 6/6. When it enters, search your library for a card, put it into your hand. You can set up your next turn, you can look for a reanimate spell, or the next creature you want to reanimate. Just a solid tutor. Kuthafed Soul Hoarder, 6 mana, 6/6 flying. Whenever a permanent owned by another player is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So as your opponents are losing creatures, you're gaining cards. If they're sacrificing tokens, treasures, you're gaining cards. Just another creature that's going to draw you a lot of cards. Speaking of which, Demon Lord Bells Unlock. When it enters, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Put it into your hand. If that card's mana value is 4 or greater, repeat this process, and then it deals 1 damage to you for each card you put into your hand this way. So you exile cards, you flip cards off the top of your library until you hit a non-land, and if it costs 4 or more, you do it again. And you keep going until it costs less than 4 mana. And look at all of these. All of these cost more than 4 mana. All of these, your reanimate spells, are 4 or more mana. So there's a really good chance when you play Demon Lord Bells Unlock, you're just going to draw like 3, 4, 5 cards. Combustible Gear Hulk will also usually draw you 3 cards. When it enters, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If they don't, you mill 3, and then it deals damage equal to the total mana value of those cards to that player. Again, everything in this deck is pretty expensive. There's a good chance if they choose to take the damage, it's going to be 15 or 20 damage. So as long as you make them aware that most of your deck has high mana costs, they will maybe err on the side of caution and let you draw the 3 cards. Or you just do a ton of damage, and that's good too. Baleful Force. At the beginning of each upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. That is 4 cards per turn cycle. Doomsday Excruciator. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. Simple. I mean, if you cast it, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down, but most of the time you're reanimating this, so that part doesn't really apply. Bloodgift Demon. It is the cheapest mana cost reanimate target. It's 5, but that's just because at the beginning of your upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. It's Phyrexian Arena on a demon. And there you go. That is the creature package for the $100 version, and it is definitely the most powerful version of the deck. Clearly, we have a lot of removal or repeated sacrifice effects. It's possible to just lock down your opponents with this version of the deck. Next up, we have the $50 creature package, and for this one I spent $29.47, so just under $50. We made it under budget. The first card is Cityscape Leveler. When you cast it and whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. So it is a repeated removal engine. It's targeted removal. This is kind of the top end removal for the deck. It's going to let us kill something of our choice every single turn when it attacks. We're probably not casting it, but if we can give it haste, we can just attack with it. We can kill stuff repeatedly. We've got Summon Kujata. This is kind of our budget Bahamut. It's a 6 mana 7/5 with trample and haste. When it enters, it deals 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures, so a little bit of removal. Chapter 2, up to 3 target creatures can't block this turn. It lets your big stuff get in for guaranteed damage. And Chapter 3, discard a card, then draw 2 cards. When you discard a card this way, this creature deals damage equal to that card's mana value to each opponent. So it's going to help you get some extra cards. It's going to let you put your next reanimation target in the graveyard and then deal a lot of damage to each opponent. So whatever you discard, Cityscape Leveler for example, 8 damage to each opponent. Alright, then we've got Dusk Mangler. As an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. Well, we're reanimating it, so that doesn't even matter. We don't have to pay the cost. But when it enters, each opponent sacrifices a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life. So it's a cheap mass sacrifice effect. You're only going to get it once, but it will help remove a little bit of stuff. We've got Demon of Loathing, 7 mana 7/7 with flying and trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices a creature. So you can see we're trying to hit similar effects to the $100 deck, but on much cheaper creatures. We're not going to get Sheoldred, we're not going to get It That Betrays, but we at least have creatures that can still remove other creatures. Infernal Sovereign, 6 mana 6/6 with flying and trample. Skip your draw step. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So it's a little bit risky, but as long as you're playing a land and casting a spell, a reanimate spell, or whatever, it's going to hopefully draw you more cards than not. It's a little bit of a risky draw engine, and that's probably why it's a cheap card. Then we have Nullspine Dragon, 7 mana 7/5. When it enters, you can discard your hand and draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. So as long as you can connect with at least one of your big creatures, you're probably going to draw at least 6 cards off of this. I drew 11 cards off of this last night, so it's actually really good at refilling your hand as long as you already have creatures on board that you can attack with. And then after that, these are all going to be repeats. These are all cards that were in the $100 version as well, but that's just because they're so good for what the deck wants to do. We have Villas for card draw, Olivia for reanimating, Rottenmouth Viper for removal, Burning Rune Demon for card advantage, Rakdos for card advantage, Arden for reanimating, Harvester of Souls, Runescarred Demon, Kothafed, Demon Lord Belzenlock, Combustible Gearhulk, Baleful Force, Doomsday Excruciator, and Blood Gift Demon, all for card advantage. It is that important to just draw extra cards in this deck. So there is the $50 version of the deck. Now, last but not least, the $5 creature package. The total came out to $4.75, putting us just under the $25 budget for the entire deck. And the quality of creatures is noticeably different here. So first up, Ulamog's Crusher. It is a big Eldrazi, an 8/8 with Annihilator 2. It attacks each turn if able, but at least it gives us that repeated sacrifice effect that we've been trying to get, that we can get a lot more easily in the higher budget versions. Then we've got Pestilence Demon, an 8 mana 7/6. For 1 black, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So if you have black mana to spend on it, you can use it as removal. If you have enough black mana, it can be a board wipe, where you can hit all the smaller creatures, and hopefully your stuff is big enough to not get killed. We have Flayer of the Hatebound. It's a 6 mana 4/2 with Undying, so when it dies, it returns with a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever Flayer of the Hatebound or another creature enters the battlefield from your graveyard, that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So this gives us a little bit of targeted removal. It is dependent, though, upon reanimating things. So it's nice because every time you reanimate something, it's going to deal damage equal to its power to a target, but that means you have to consistently reanimate things. If you miss a reanimation, this doesn't really do much. Magmatic Force. It is repeated lightning bolts. At the beginning of each upkeep, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So it can at least repeatedly remove small threats. You can get rid of small creatures, mana dorks, or whatever little combo pieces your opponents are trying to put out on the board, but anything bigger than that, it's going to struggle. Abhorrent Overlord. It's a 7 mana 6/6. When it enters, you make a number of 1/1 black harpies with flying equal to your devotion to black. And you do have a lot of black pips in the creatures in this deck, so I did cast this, or reanimate this, and make like 12 harpies one game, so it is pretty good for making a big board of small attackers. We have Orca Siege Demon. It's a 7 mana 5/5 with trample, and whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then when Orca dies, it deals damage equal to its power, divided as you choose among any number of targets. So it is a little bit of removal. It does have to die, and the bigger it gets, the more things die while it's on board, the more effective it's going to be. Summon Anima is, it's not that great. It's a 6 mana 4/4 with Menace, but for the first 3 chapters, it draws you a card each turn, and then chapter 4, each opponent sacrifices a creature and loses 3 life. So not bad, but definitely worse than what we've had before. Vile Mutilator, 7 mana 6/5. You don't have to worry about the additional cost because you're reanimating it. It has flying and trample, and when it enters, each opponent sacrifices a non-token enchantment, then sacrifices a non-token creature. So good if your opponents have like 1 enchantment each, and then also helps get rid of some creatures. Rakshasa Debaser, 6 mana 6/6. Whenever it attacks, put target creature card from defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So it'll help you steal creatures from your opponent's graveyards, and then it has Encore, so if it's in your graveyard for 8 mana, you can make 3 token copies of it and steal 3 creatures, 1 creature from each player. So it's not terrible. And then from there, everything here you've seen before. Overseer of the Damned. Rakdos is actually the most expensive card in this deck at 100 yen, 67 cents. This is the most expensive creature that I could fit into this $5 package. We've got Rakdos, Arden, which is great always, Baleful Force, Combustible Gearhulk, Demon Lord Belzenlock, Doomsday Excruciator, Nullspine Dragon, Runescarred Demon, Blood Gift Demon, and Kothafed. All creatures that are going to give us a little extra card advantage, because it is that important. Okay, it's been a couple weeks since I got back from Japan, and I've been able to playtest all 3 versions of the deck, and the $25 version is actually the only one that I didn't get a win with. And that's not to say that it's not capable of winning. It's perfectly capable. but you do lose a little bit of quality in the card draw, the removal that you have attached to the creatures. I just didn't hit the same velocity of card draw and deploying threats as I did with the $50 and $100 version. You know, it's possible we have Arden that's going to help us reanimate extra creatures. We have ways to draw cards. They're just not as consistent in the cheaper version of the deck. I think personally the $50 version was probably the most fun. The $100 version is pretty oppressive. If you get Sheoldred out, if you get It That Betrays out, you're really, really locking down opponents. And I mean, that's great for winning games, but you're also kind of locking your opponents out of playing, which it's not the most fun thing, I think, when I'm playing Commander with friends. I would love for them to be able to play the game. So sometimes I think cards like Sheoldred are just too mean for certain tables. The $50 version I think had a good balance where there's good targeted removal. You can focus on the biggest threats and not just like shut everyone down all at the same time. But the shell is definitely set up to work no matter what creatures you put in it. So this is kind of similar to my Galanra Elena deck where you can just throw any big scary creatures in it. As long as you have enough card draw on those creatures, the deck will just continue to work almost no matter what. Card draw is the most important, and as long as you have that, you're going to keep playing big threats to the board, and big threats can win games. So really, if you build the rest of the shell, you can fill those 20 creature slots with whatever you can find in your bulk drawers. I mean, I think a fun way to play the deck would to just like randomly draw the 20 creatures each time I play it. Out of my stack of 80 potential creatures, I just not know what creatures I'm going to have in it. Choose 20 creatures at random before the game and play it out, and I think it would be a lot of fun to play that way. Now lastly, if you want to upgrade the deck and make it a little bit more consistent, obviously adding bigger, scarier creatures is going to help. If you're not capping out at a $100 budget, you can put in as many big, scary Sheoldred level creatures as you want. That's obviously going to make it a lot more powerful, but to make it more consistent, I think you can run things like the Graveyard Tutors, cards like Unmarked Grave and Tomb, Buried Alive, things that are going to let you just put the big creatures you want straight into your graveyard to reanimate. You would probably replace some of the Faithless Looting, the discard type effects with the Graveyard Tutors. You can also play more efficient reanimate spells, cards like Animate Dead, Reanimate, so that you can save your mana, you can start saving up those treasures for the late game in case you need to hard cast any of the big threats from your hand. You have that option. There are even better 4 and 5 mana reanimate spells like Will of the Abzan. It reanimates, it does something else. Any number of target opponents each sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control and lose 3 life. So like that's 4 mana reanimate with huge upside. Overall, I had fun with all 3 versions of the deck. I think it's a really fun, consistent, simple game plan, and I had a ton of fun building it this way. I've said before that I kind of approach deck building as part of the game, putting the whole thing together and kind of gamifying that process by going into the card shops and not knowing what the deck was going to look like at the end of it, I think added an extra layer of enjoyment for me. So hope you enjoyed it. If you build out the deck, let me know what creatures you would put in it. And if you want to see more from card shops in Japan, you want to see everything that I got, check out this video over here. And if you want to see another budget deck, this one's a good one right here too. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.